Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order of our SRO Exploratory Committee at 6:35. And thank you for joining us, committee members. You will see we also have the SROs joining us to speak to item 5 on our agenda this evening. So welcome. And we'll get started. I sent our minutes from our last meeting to everyone. I hope you had a chance to review them. Did anyone note any changes or corrections that I need to make to the minutes?
Dr. Loomis, I'd like to make a friendly amendment to the minutes.
Sure.
Under section 5, paragraph A, we're listed as the special forces. We're actually the Special Investigations Unit. Well, I appreciate the kind of a Guardians of the Galaxy type moniker. We're Special Investigations Unit. We handle youth injuries, sex assaults, school security, you name it, we're involved in. Quietly.
Thank you. I will make that change. Any other corrections or changes I need to make to the minutes? All right. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes of John Polino.
Thank you. And
I second.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. And that brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which is reviewing our norms that we adopted at our last meeting. And those were to allow and respect all voices, to listen to understand, and to recognize that sometimes we're talking about people and sometimes we're talking about systems, and those two things are different. Are there, since our last meeting, are there any other norms that people feel like we need to add? Okay. So we will move on to item 4 on our agenda, which is discussing the materials that I shared with you in our Google folder. And what I would like to do to facilitate this discussion is go through the materials in some kind of order. So we'll take them 1 or 2 at a time. And as we come to an item, I am welcoming people to ask questions about that document, to note things that they like about the document, and to note any concerns that they have within the document. So I came up with an order to review these documents that made sense to me. It's not, it's just what it is. So the first document I'd like to address is it's called Overview of School Resource Officer Program. So for this part of the meeting, it would be helpful if people could pull these documents up. I can share my screen and display the document that I'm referencing, but it's probably also easy for you to be able to access them. So I would recommend going to that folder. So overview of the School Resource Officer Program was this document. are there any questions or things that we like about this document or concerns that we have about this document?
I had some questions about this document.
All right, go ahead, Diana.
My question was around who created it? Because it wasn't clear. Some of the other things are pretty clear cut, like this is the SRO job description, this is the Middletown Public Schools overview. I wasn't sure who Don is and what this document was used for.
I can speak to that. The document was created by Don Shamet. He's a SRO trainer. He also does training with teachers, principals, that type of thing. I think he's based out of Pennsylvania, but he teaches throughout the Northeast, actually all across the US. I told him there was some questions about the SRO program here in Middletown, and he said he would write something in about, when it was established. Just really had nothing specific for Middletown other than just some background. Some of the things that are taught during his programs, things that they try to incorporate into the SRO plan, if you will. And that's it. He's sort of a friend of the program, and he's a trainer, and he's known across the US.
So this is not necessarily the training that our officers go through. It's just an overview.
Yes, some of the-
he
so-
provides.
Some of the school resource officers have taken his program. So when programs come out, the SRO program, it has to do with the timing, really. If Elliot Spector, another known trainer, is offering a program, we'll send folks to him. However, if Don Shamet is offering a program that we need to get someone through, we'll send our SRO or prospective SROs through Don Shamet. So whomever we end up choosing, it's usually based on their availability, the time frame we're trying to incorporate an SRO into the schools, and that's about it. And there's other trainers out there as well. It's not just limited to those two.
And is the content across trainers the same? So that if one SRO trained with Don and another trained with Elliot, they're receiving the same exact content, or is it just?
It's never going to be the same exact content. However, in the end, just like when our folks attend the police academy, they're going to get training there, but they have to return to Middletown to get sort of an overview of what we expect here in Middletown.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions or things that we like or concerns about this document?
I had a question. So is the training is the you said there's two different ones, or Don and Elliot. So is it a one-time thing? Is it a multi thing? Is it when each SRO goes into the school, they're trained and at first, and then that's it for this or overview?
Correct.
Okay.
They get their training through one of the programs that's available. And again, it may be Elliot Spector's program. It may be Don Shamet's program. I'm trying to think of another off the top of my head. If one of the SROs can think of one, just shout it out to me. But they get the program before they go out into the field. And maybe they go through the program. They don't think they're fit to be the SRO, and they don't want to do it. They find out things that, they're going to be dealing with kids. They're going to be dealing with school administrations. It's sort of a different atmosphere than the street cop is going to see. So, they get that training, and then they come here and they learn what we do here. That's
Okay.
pretty much it. There has been other training courses that are offered, but they're supplement to the SRO program.
Oh, sorry.
I was just pointing out, I pulled up another document, since the conversation was going toward training. I pulled up the document called SRO Training Programs 2021.
I had one more question about this document.
Oh, okay, I'll go back.
Mhm. So this document doesn't make any specificity about race or racial equity training. And as far as I understand, that's also an optional thing at the academy. So officers don't necessarily have to take it if they are not interested or don't have the capacity for it. Is that something that's worked into other trainings that are offered by other people?
I think that I think you might stand corrected on that. The academy is requiring during our research equity and bias training. So they are getting them. All officers, not just SROs.
My other question was around training specific to adolescent brain development, child development, psychology, and it seems like there's a lot of positivity, feel good things, but not anything specific around here's how children's brain develops differently. Here's how children manifest, behaviors in different ways than adults. Is that something that's covered in any of the trainings?
I haven't been to the recent training, so I couldn't tell you, but I believe that it is touched upon.
Yeah, I can chime in. This is Officer
Thanks,
Sanford.
Eric.
That was a significant part of our training, and this was done 3 years ago, was geared towards the specific development of adolescent brains and their behavior. So a good chunk of it is on that specific topic.
And who offered that training?
It was part of the certification that we received. I think it was the 2-week-long certification that we received to become certified SROs. I don't remember specifically who offered it or who provided it, but I do remember it was a significant part of the training.
Bill, I believe the department, all of us were sent through a youth training before that on adolescent development. I could pull up the documents and get it to you guys, but I know that we all went up to Cromwell to the Marriott and we all did training up there on the youth and juveniles and understand that development that was separate from an SRO training.
I know that there were sections of juvenile law, and I could go through specific trainings. Can't remember what every person received as training. So thank you, Kristen, for speaking up. I do have the training outlines here of some of the things that the SROs go through after becoming SROs or after going through the certification program.
Okay.
And before you end on the history of the SRO by Don Chomet, just know that was really just a letter to show some history about the SRO program to those that didn't know it, and to sort of give an overview of it. That's all it was. It has nothing to do with the policies here in Middletown.
Okay.
It was a letter of support.
Molly, I see Molly has her hand raised, so I'd like to recognize her.
Thank you, Lisa. Just my question is for Sgt Porter. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but who is training the trainers? Is this SRO training coming out of a study and that's how the trainers are getting trained? So my question for whether you're doing this, people like you just said, Lisa just dropped a document, but that guy or the other man you mentioned, or even if you're doing child brain development, who is training your trainers? I'd be interested to know that.
These are all certified academy trainers. As long as they passed what we call POST, the Police Officer Certification and Training Council, they're able to teach. And they teach these programs, whether it be through research, which we do every 3 years, or programs that we elect to take because a class comes up and we sign up for it online, and we either attend it or attend it virtually. I hope that somewhat answers the question.
So I pulled up the document about the training program, so people can turn to that one. I do have a question. There is the National Association of School Resource Officers, and they provide some training, including training on adolescent mental health. I was wondering if we have ever used any of the resources from that organization. It's the National Association of School Resource Officers.
Yes, I believe so. And I believe that our SROs, although not lately, have been meeting with the Connecticut chapter of that. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, that's the, I think it's a quarterly meeting or an annual meeting.
Yes, Bill.
So I will share that I'm happy to hear from our SRO Tersic that there was some training on adolescent development. It is concerning to me as a board member when I look at these documents about the training and it doesn't mention adolescent development or de-escalation or trauma-informed practices, or students with disabilities. These are things that I would expect any person working with children would be like the foundation of the training, and yet we've got a lot of bullet points here, and those things are not mentioned.
I have the same first question about this document. Who created this?
I wish I could answer that one. I'm not 100% on that either.
At the second page or last page, there's a piece about personal beliefs. And I wanted to know who to attribute those to.
Page 2 of 2.
Page 3, the last page. I personally believe that we have developed. So I wasn't, at first I was like, okay, this looks like an official training document, but then the last page about someone's personal beliefs kind of made me think that, okay, maybe this isn't an official training document.
Bill, as you look for that, I want to just echo what Dr. Loomis mentioned about the importance of adolescent brain development and trauma-informed practices, and would encourage that, like that extend to your point, to anybody working with youth, and it should be part of like universal training and work that we do in schools and classrooms too. So I think like I don't know if that's always the case, even in education. That we have those conversations about behavior, and I just want to echo how important it is.
I agree with you, Justin. And I believe these documents being dated just don't reference that material. And, you know, the top of the form is Middletown Public Schools for the year 2013, 2014 year and beyond. So this predates my being in this office.
This current document, SRO training programs, is dated 2021.
Am I not looking at the right form?
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because some of the things on the last page, like parents love the visibility of the PD having a presence. Those are all a lot of these bullet points at the end feel like personal opinions. And I wonder if this is an official document, if there's some kind of data or a subset of information we could look at that would sort of support some of the claims. There's also no mention of race in this document either, which I think is similar to disability, trauma, socioeconomic status, are all sort of things that a bias conversation should be included as part of training for any officer, but specifically for officers working with children.
Lisa, can you look and see who the owner of the document is? It also says that it was recently edited 7 days ago.
Yeah, this was shared with us. Marco shared this document with us in January in the policy, when this came up in our Board of Ed policy meeting. That's where I got this document. How do I check the owner? I guess I can.
If you click on the share button, you may be able to see the owner, but that edit could be when you put it in this folder.
That's probably what it is.
So if you go up to the share button,
Yeah, feel the share button on top right.
if you don't have rights to edit it, when you go to edit it, it will ask you to request from the owner.
Yeah, at least
Owner. It says, yeah, you're the owner, Lisa. Interesting.
that's because she put it in the folder. So
Right.
that's
But so I'm wondering who you received it from as a board member.
Marco shared this and the MOUs and some other documents with us when this topic came up in the policy committee meeting in January or February.
I've got the answer.
Okay, great.
I was reading down and something jumped up at me. It says, if you read down maybe a quarter of the way, it says people are the prize. That's Don Chomet's moniker, if you will. People are the prize. And that's in there, creating, implementing positive and effective SRO strategy of people are the prize. So I don't believe that, and I don't know if this is connected, another page that says school resource officer SRO that's connected to this document. And that's actually page 3. I don't know how those two got attached, but one is the work of Don Chomet and the other, I'm not 100%. The one that references the 2013, 14
Is this
school
the
year.
document the other document you're referencing?
No. That's
Lisa,
it.
I think if you
I don't know if
go
mine's-
back, look at the version history, will tell you who started it. I'm not sure we need to know that at this moment, but
Well,
that
now
will tell you who started it.
we know it's from Don Chomet at this point.
Well, but the bottom, I don't think is that I personally believe.
It just has me because I put it in here.
Lisa, I had a question about the first two documents that we've looked at. They both reference Sandy Hook, and I think there are some statewide recommendations that post Sandy Hook, and I wondered if that's something we could share in the save to the shared drive, because I would want to know what those are compared to what the SRO's day-to-day duties are.
Okay, so state recommendations for school safe.
I think there was like a post Sandy Hook safety committee or something. And so because both the first and second document that you showed reference Sandy Hook. And so I think there's some policy recommendations around safety in schools. So I would want to understand the difference between those versus like the day-to-day activities of the SRO.
All right, I will track those down and add them to our folder.
As an update to at least the two high school students, Ani has a class that she's taken with Oberlin, and today is the last day, so she is completing that responsibility. And Jewel plans to join us after 7. So she should be here.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we had questions around who created this, and we're pretty confident it came from Don Shamet, based on the consistency of verbiage between this and the overview of school resource officer program that we have from him. We have raised some questions and concerns about this document not referencing, neither document referencing race or adolescent development, de-escalation, trauma-informed practices. Any other questions, comments around this training document?
I had one question about one of the bullet points says conducting student safety assessments and creating intervention and management plans with staff. What does that mean?
So that is here. That is on the first page, about 3/4 of the way down.
These are, and SROs can jump in if they want, because I know some of them did go through the student assessment programs to assess students for violence, suicidal tendencies, find the outlier that, might need to be spoken to, talk to him or her. And the SROs can expound on that, but that's where we work together on developing a plan with the admin of the school and move forward with the student.
Yeah, I can add on that. And the training is pretty much just like Sergeant Porter said. It's just becoming essentially familiar with the students. And if you find something that seems to be out of the norm, something that kind of heightens your awareness or just brings something to your attention, then maybe addressing it with the guidance counselors. But I think it's just becoming familiar with as many students as possible. And if something kind of heightens your concern, just how to be aware of signs like that, I think is what that's referring to.
Okay, I thought because they were all capitalized that it was an official school thing, like some kind of official school intervention and management plan that was informed by y'all, but okay, thank you.
I would like to jump in. I know that sometimes when a student makes a threat against the school, that we do a safety assessment of them and their homes to make sure there's no weapons or whatnot. And we work with the staff to make sure they know so that they can come in and do backpack checks and make sure that everybody is safe. And I don't know if that goes along with that, because I think this is under Don Shamet's thing again, but that is something that we do with students when a threat is made, and just making sure that everybody stays safe.
Thank you.
I'll second that with Kristen. This is something we deal with more often than anyone knows. And I'll give you for instance, and I'll get off topic. This weekend, or actually last weekend, Saturday, actually, I was home. I received a call from headquarters. The FBI had sent information concerning one of the students to us, where she was making school threats. Specific laid out plans to kill the SROs, to kill as many students as she possibly could, and then, kill herself. This, prompted us figuring out where she was, and we did the research we needed to do. We found her, we spoke with her. We conducted a safety plan with her parents, and we got her the help that she needed. This was the second time that this particular student had done this. So this time it warranted an arrest as well. So she was issued a summons, but more importantly, she was brought up to CCMC, which is in the glossary of terms here tonight. CCMC is Connecticut Children's Hospital up in Hartford, where she received, the psychological help that she needed. And from there, she moved on to another facility. So the arrest portion, it's secondary. We'll figure that out afterwards. But to get the student and the family the help that they need to cope with a situation like that is what this team is all about. And it happens quite a bit, whether it's a note dropped in the hallway at the school, we track it back and figure out who the student was that dropped it, threatening violence to the school, or a case like this where it's picked up on the internet and delivered to us here at the PD, and then we act on it from here. This is the group that goes out and handles all that. So most of the times we've been successful. Other times, it's it results in an arrest and some I don't want to say jail time, because juvenile detention isn't really jail. They spend some time and incarcerated, and they're usually out within 2 weeks.
So that sparks a couple of questions for me. Lisa, if we could add mental illness to the list of things that are also not mentioned, because I think it's unfortunate that on top of dealing with being mentally ill, this child also now has to deal with an arrest. And I would argue that most people who have been in juvenile detention would think that it is a prison because you can't leave. But my other question is around—
Can I just stop you there just before we move on? Hold that thought, because again, the arrest will be probably tossed aside if she gets the mental health that she needs. It's an arrest, it's documentation. Juvenile summons, I don't want to make it smaller than it actually is, but sure, the court thing is there. However, if she's going to get this treatment and she gets help through the hospitals, through the doctors, through the folks that have the knowledge to deal with these types of things, they'll wash the arrest. And they'll say that she got the help.
Still went through the experience of being arrested and summoned, though. And that is a conversation about trauma that we also added to the list as one of the things that's missing from here. The other thing I would ask related to that is that there's no mention in the training around any documentation or data practices, because we should know about those things. So why don't we know about those things? How are those things being tracked by the officers that are encountering them? Where are they documented? And where can the public access that information on an annual basis?
So I'm going to bring up the MOUs. I know the 2014 MOU references collection and sharing of data. I don't think the 2010 MOU does, but since we're moving in the direction of data, we'll go to the MOUs and practices, I guess. We'll go to the MOUs next.
Through the chair.
That
John
was going to be
Polino.
my question.
Through the chair.
John? Yes, John?
Thank you for recognizing me. I just wondering, was Sergeant Porter done with his statement? I can't really hear it on the phone that well. I'm just curious.
Sergeant Porter, did you have a thought to finish?
Well, I did want to say an arrest is, for a youth, is not as traumatizing as you might think. We issue an invitation to come to court. That's it. And in some cases, we can tell them right on the scene, hey, we're going to work with you on this, and we could send you through juvenile diversion. You'll work with the SROs or someone at the police department to move you away from the court system and into JRB. And Justin will talk about that. But, the arrest isn't being like the movies, cuffed and stuffed. You're going to get an invitation to come to court, and that's it. They hand it to you and your parents as the child, and we move on to handling other things. That's it.
Thank you for that. From my perspective as a parent, were my child to be summoned or arrested or handcuffed, that would be traumatic for me, and also an additional mental worry for a child who's already mentally struggling, but also an additional process for a family who's struggling to then, on top of having to help their child and seek help, then also have a legal procedure that might be costly, require them to leave work, and create more stress in a family that may already be stressed. So those are the things that I'm thinking about in terms of when we talk about de-escalation and routing folks in a way that's restorative, as opposed to a way that adds more stress potentially to folks. And everyone doesn't have the same experience, so I can't speak for this specific child or for any specific child. But those are the things I'm thinking about in the creation of a process that prioritizes de-escalation and restorative practices, and the support that this child now gets great through CCMC, and hopefully, we can avoid arrest altogether. So thank you for that.
I see Molly's hand raised, so I'd like to recognize Molly.
Thank you, Dr. Loomis. So that Sergeant Porter, that first comment you made, this happens more often than we would know. That's the type of information and data that we would like to have. How often are you responding to these types of calls and sending out your SROs to touch base or meet with students? To answer the question you had last week, because I asked what type of data are you collecting? And you said, what type of data do you want? And I guess that's what we want to know.
Okay. Well, the police department collects records, and we're a record keeper. Every time we do something that involves some type of action, like an investigation of violence, there's going to be a case number. In addition to our initial response, my phone rings up Marco Gaylord and just says, "Hey, this is what's going on. I just want to let you know. We'll let you know where we're at in a couple hours." And we keep the school administrations informed while we're dealing with it. As far as case numbers are given for everything, especially for things like that. Like I said, if you want a case number, we will pull a case number for, I can't say every interaction with a student. I think we covered that last week, but certainly interactions where things may have bordered a referral.
Are you giving cumulative totals to the administration? Are you sharing those with the Board of Education? Like, other than the one-off calls to the school central administration, is it either the Board of Ed or somebody in the administration getting like monthly totals, annual totals?
With the school, no. I think we had a better line of communication when Pat Charles was here regarding that. However, currently, we just provide it to the Youth Services Bureau, which is Justin Carbonella's group. And I bring that personally.
So the 2010 MOU does say that the SRO will document incidents to which the SRO is involved. It doesn't, says beginning 2011, 2012, SROs will keep a daily log of activities to be provided to the school administrator. Those are the only references in that MOU toward documentation and sharing. In the 2014, which is the current MOU, there is more. There's a section labeled data collection and monitoring. And it says the parties agree that they will provide baseline data for comparison purposes and regularly collect, share, monitor, and report data resulting from the implementation of this agreement. So as a Board of Ed member, who has not ever been presented with any of this documentation unless I've asked, I'm curious what the practice is for this and what this looks like.
Is that for me?
Yeah, whoever.
Currently, unless it's requested, we haven't been doing it other than tracking it for the Youth Services Bureau. And that's every arrest in Middletown, with the exception of those we aren't aware of, like school-based arrest at Vinyl, state police arrests, that type of thing. But if it's requested, we'll deliver it, removing names and redacting some information. The material that I provided tonight, unfortunately, cannot be shared on the.
Yeah, so I haven't shared that with the committee yet. I figured when I had all of the data points that we were getting, I would share that with the committee and we could discuss that at our next meeting on the 25th.
Fair enough. But yes, to answer your question, we would be happy to provide it if someone requested it. If it's the chair of the school board, we could do that. School-based arrest. But we do provide that same material to the Youth Services Bureau and Justin Carvin.
So this says on a regular basis and at least quarterly, parties acknowledge and agree that the school police collaboration team, composed of at least 2 members from each party, will meet to provide oversight of the agreement and review relevant data and analysis. At least annually, the team will prepare a report of activities and make recommendations for improvements to the agreement and/or its implementation. Has that happened?
It has not.
Okay. I see Diane.
At least not involving me. I can tell you that no one's called me for the data or a sit down for a meeting. I think that over time it probably fell by the wayside. Different police chiefs, different school administrators, new persons in this role. It just wasn't getting done.
How long have you been in that role?
2013, end of 2013.
Okay. I see Diana's hand raised. So I'll recognize Diana.
Yeah, so there seems, when I look at the 2 MOUs, there's the big radical difference in the 2 of them. And I'm wondering if that was just, if anybody knows, and it maybe it's just a thing that happened, but if this was the result of a change in leadership between Frechette and Pat Charles that prompted this much more detailed 2014 graduated response model inclusion in the MOU, or if there was some community response or incident that sparked the need for something much more comprehensive. And then my second question is about the reporting. The way it's written doesn't necessarily specify that the reporting is just on arrests. The MOU itself goes through a whole process of graduated response. So I'm wondering if there's if the reporting at the end of this is supposed to give us a picture of how many situations didn't get to the point of arrest because they were processed through a graduated response model, and if there's a methodology for collecting data around what didn't get to a point of arrest because there was diversion.
Okay, so I heard 2 questions. Why such a change from the 2010 to the 2014 MOU? And then the 2014, our current MOU that we're operating under, has a graduated response and does not just say that data will be collected on arrests. And then Diana, can you finish that part?
Yeah, so I guess what I'm asking is if this is a if this document is an agreement between two parties, it feels like there's a responsibility both from the Board of Ed's part and from the MPD's part to compile a report. I didn't think that this was a report that was necessarily supposed to be produced by the Middletown Police Department. And then I thought the way I read it was that the report was supposed to comprise all of this, not just arrests, but some methodology for tracking how many in-school incidents were diverted or not raised to the level of arrest by this graduated response model. So I didn't read it as like the MPD has to provide a report that says like, this is what we're doing, but that the two parties together would come together at the end of the year to compile a report that then is presented, I would imagine, publicly. I didn't think it was something that MPD would share just with Board of Ed. I thought that this was the creation of a document that would be shared on the Middletown Public Schools webpage or publicly. But I may have totally read that wrong.
That makes sense. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that or the practice.
Lisa, I'm asking to be recognized. I can't find a way to put my hand up for the reaction.
Is that Cheryl?
Yes,
Sure,
yes,
Cheryl,
it
go
is.
ahead.
I just want to say that we document on our end through Power School anytime there is an arrest. So we have it documented. We also have to report it to the state. So we document it through Power School, and at any time we can pull a report. If we want, we're asked to or wanted to, or we were looking at information. So I just wanted to share that we do have documentation on arrests.
And I'll add to Cheryl's comment. We document the material for arrests and referrals already. So if it's a matter of making quarterly reports and making a copy for someone at the school, we have no problem doing that because it's already being done.
Mm-hmm.
To answer the question about the evolution from 2010 to 2014 with the MOUs, I don't know if I can speak with specificity, but context that might be helpful is that both MOUs, the MOU template, was developed by the state's Office of Policy and Management as part of their police reform work and police and schools work. And so the inclusion of the graduated response model might have been that between 2010 and 2014, the state created that model and then required it as part of that MOU process.
And if I can add on to that, that right response chart, I believe it's on the third or fourth page, has been very helpful in ensuring that we're not involved in things that we shouldn't be.
Other questions or comments around data collection, oversight, monitoring, things like that?
Chairman, this is Roger Hart. I request to be recognized.
Sure, Roger, go ahead.
Just to clarify the difference between the MOUs, in 2010, it looks like and I can only speculate on this, it was probably just a MOU that was drawn up between the schools and the police department for the program. But in 2015, and as Justin said, the OPM did in fact do a study on the SRO program. They published some data, and in 2015 there was a public act that required these MOUs be put together with the towns and the police departments and the schools. And it's actually codified now to Connecticut General Statute Section 233M, and then there's several other statute points that follow that require the data collection, the de-escalation, and many of the other points that are in the MOU.
Can you put the number, that statute in the chat for me?
Sure. Absolutely.
Are there questions or comments on other aspects of the MOUs?
While I still have the floor, Chairman, if you don't mind, I think this document, I don't know if it's beyond the purview of this group to really critique the document, but it really needs some help. Just going through it, it's on, just from the page 1, it's not even on town letterhead. It's on OPM juvenile justice letterhead. It should be on a town or Board of Ed letterhead. Each page should be numbered. It should speak to the, and I don't want to go too fast, but it should speak to a general statute that I just mentioned that's requiring it. I'm not an educator, but I did do a little research on the right to response chart that the sergeant mentioned. It is helpful, I understand, in having something to go to, but there's current questions out there whether chart responses are actually healthy for a school environment. And again, I think that's something that maybe the educators could speak to more than I. And there's also certain things that I think need to be in an MOU, something just defining what an SRO is. A Middletown, or a Middletown sworn police officer with whatever training and whatever years of service. I think that's important. That belongs in an MOU. And as we already discussed earlier, I think the SRO training requirements, the training that some of the folks already brought up is important and probably needs to be spoken to in the MOU. There is current training in Connecticut called crisis intervention training. It's a 40-hour training that will speak to dealing with people in crisis situations and how to handle it. I think maybe working on including some of that training in it is important to be as part of the MOU. Discipline and or removal of a SRO, I think needs to be addressed in the document somehow, a formal procedure, presumably a letter from the principal or superintendent to the chief of police requesting a review of an SRO's position, establishing the chain of command to determine who the SRO understands who they work for directly and how that chain of command works with the administration of the school. Confidentiality, I think, is very important. And again, some of the educators can speak to this. I've seen some MOUs that include a confidentiality clause where they consider SRO school officials. So through FERPA, the school can share information and it's confidential on student information. And the last but not least, I think there needs to be an understanding between the school and the police department of if budgetary constraints limit the police department's ability to put people in the school, how is that dealt with? And if there's an emergency across the town, how the town and the school would understand that the SROs may be temporarily reassigned to the emergency situation as rather being in the schools. So those are just some points. I know it's a lot, but again, I don't know if it's beyond our purview. But there's a lot of good documents out there that we and or the people that draft the MOU can use as a sound template.
I do think, I was going to say, I do think that is beyond our purview, but when there is a committee that is redoing the MOU, I would love for you to be on that committee. So I'm a little doing a little voluntelling, hopefully. Can you?
If I may, I just want to OPM has also walked away from this work. And so
OPM stands for?
The Office of Policy and Management.
Thank you.
And Valerie Lamont had been the person kind of overseeing a lot of this work, and she's since retired a few years back, and none of this is being kept up or improved. And so I think where this MOU probably filled a void where a void existed, I think to Roger's points and the points that other folks are making, I think we are probably at a place where we can really think about what makes sense for Middletown as opposed to absorbing something to address, which at the time was a pretty severe school-based arrest issue that this community was having. We were out punching our weight class in terms of the number of school-based arrests, which is not the case presently. But when these numbers were first being collected, or a couple of years before the first MOU, we were pound for pound with like schools with 3,000 students and referrals to court, and so that is different now. But I think it's time for probably an evolved and more comprehensive look at this. And Roger, I appreciate your insights.
Roger, I'd like to follow up. You mentioned something around the right to response chart, and that maybe you wanted educators to weigh in because there are some questions around these. Did I get that?
Yeah, I think that my point was just some of the research that I was looking at recently. Again, and I'm not an expert in this area at all, and I think some of our educators may be, but there's a current trend of getting away from like response charts because every child is different, and again, I would defer to educators for that.
Okay. All right. I want to.
Lisa, can I chime in for a second?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't know if you saw I raised my hand. I just in response to Roger, I wanted to let you know that several years ago I was the department training officer, and at that time, at least half our department had gone through the CIT training, and we had been working towards getting the whole department certified. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of retirements, so we do have a lot of new people, but I would say, myself included, have at least a third, if not more, of the department has gone through CIT training, and their goal is to continually try to get everybody in the department up to being trained in CIT, because I do agree with you that mental health training is excellent and that everybody should go through it.
And that's you said CIAT or CIT?
CIT, Crisis Intervention Training. It's an excellent training program. And I know that, things got slowed down with COVID and we had a lot of retirements, but at one point we were almost entirely certified in the department, but we're probably back down again, but I can definitely bring that back up with our department training officer. It's a great program, and it's great for any police officer to have. It's a wonderful program.
Thank you. I would like to recognize, sorry, lost my display. I appreciate your patience. It's difficult to chair and take notes at the same time.
Dr. Loomis, I know Roberta has had her hand
Roberta,
up.
yes, Roberta.
Hi, I had a follow-up question actually for Cheryl. Cheryl, you made mention that Power School, you document the arrests. Are the referrals documented in Power School as well?
Are you talking about just general teacher referrals that are written?
No, I mean the referrals that, the arrests.
Yes.
The referrals that Sergeant Porter was talking about.
Yes, so when there's any incident, we will have our own internal referral, we call it, and then we will document the resolution of that and what happened. And if there is an arrest, we will write what the actual arrest was, and like if it was for breach of peace or whatever it could be. And then so we have it documented and it gets sent to the state. We will also right when it was, well, no, we wouldn't, because we wouldn't know afterwards, because a lot of times it then, even if there's a summons, it does get diverted and go to Justin. So I wouldn't know that it did get diverted, or I might know, but we don't follow up and change that, and perhaps we should.
Thank you, Cheryl. I do have a second question, which is for Dr. Loomis. Dr. Loomis, are we going to have a chance to ask questions of the SROs, or do we have to wait until the next meeting?
I did want to get to hearing from, oh gosh. I did want to get to item 5 on our agenda, which is to hear from the SROs as well as the other adults. But I don't want to cut this short. I also want to respect the fact that the SROs came to this meeting, especially to share. So I'm trying to wrap this up quickly so we can move on to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Diana?
I wanted to say that I did like that the 2014 MOU has some shared principles that I thought were very good, particularly Principle A. The vast majority of student misconduct can be best addressed through classroom and in-school strategies and maintaining a positive climate within schools rather than by involvement of the justice community. And I also wanted to ask if we could, we were talking about the right response chart. The very last row is called data points. And so that's why I thought that there would be the collection of these points. For instance, the data points around, for the different levels: parent contact, disciplinary incident, intervention, outcome, and recidivism. I thought that it sort of sounded like these were things that we were already tracking. So I'm not sure if something doesn't rise to the level 4 of arrest, are we then, still tracking a level 2 response by these data points that were outlined here: demographics, parent contact, disciplinary intervention, outcome, recidivism. Those are the 2 questions I have.
So this MOU does indicate that data would be collected for each of these various levels. We've heard from administrators and from Sergeant Porter that data on arrests is collected. Is data on level 1, 2, and 3 collected? I think is the question.
Yes, it is, and it's documented in Power School. So we have a running log that does document every incident and the resolution of that incident, and whether it usually notes too that there's parent contact. We have a process where we like to, because I believe in this chart that we want to solve most of our problems. I always say to teachers, the ones closest to the situation, often can resolve it. So it goes from, but a teacher will document, and before they give us a referral, unless it's something very serious, they will document the steps that they have taken to try to, what's the word I want to say, remediate a problem. Say a student talking out in class, it's a silly example, but they would say, I've talked to the student, I've talked to the parent, I've given them, maybe a lunch detention, and the behavior persists, and then it will go to an administrator, and, we try different avenues to change the behavior so that it doesn't interfere with learning. So it's all documented and collected by the state.
Thank you. So for those of you who don't know, Cheryl is the principal at Woodrow Wilson Middle School.
Can I make one clarifying point? Lisa,
Yes.
this is Colleen Miner, principal at the high school.
Yes.
So, I want to be clear that teachers, if they've remediated a situation, which they do hundreds of times, probably a day, right? They are not documenting those level 1 interventions. So it's only when it needs to rise to an administrator, for the most part, that we would have documentation on that. So we do a log entry, and it's not, PowerSchool isn't the most user-friendly tool all the time to be able to disaggregate that data. So I just want to be clear that those classroom interventions, which are so critical and are occurring, the vast majority of the time, those are unfortunately not going to be necessarily documented.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. So the last documents we have to look at are the SRO job description. So there was this document. I got two through my research and through sharing from Marco. There's this one that specifies 2013 to 2014. There's also this one. And I can't remember which of these two are on the website right now. It might be this one. But questions, comments on these descriptions?
I had a question. Could we get, is it on this one? The policy for SROs? It was 5114.
Yeah, I will track that down and add that to our folder.
Is that a description of SROs, or is that part of the MOU?
So relations with law enforcement agencies it's a very short policy that I don't think it mentions SROs at all. This is just saying that this program falls under that policy, and it was the discussion of that policy in the Board of Ed Policy Committee as that committee is going through and reviewing all of our old policies that led to the creation of this committee. So it is very brief. I will add that so that you can reference it. It won't tell you much about this program at all.
Oh, okay.
Molly?
Yeah, I had a question, Lisa, about, I haven't seen anywhere where it mentions minimum age on the SRO description. I don't know if they're making referrals and creating arrest cases at the middle school or elementary level. So I would want to know, is there a minimum age that the district would like to prevent arrests?
Sergeant Porter, do you want to, is there a minimum age?
We haven't arrested anyone, at least recently, that I'm aware of, in any of the elementary schools. Most cases are handled in-house, school-wise.
That's correct. I talked to the other elementary principals, and there are 0 incidents of SROs making arrests at the elementary level.
Just right now or historically?
I would say historically. I haven't seen it in my term, and I've been up here since the end of 2013.
Correct. So since the SROs have been in Middletown for a while, so they have not had any arrests at the elementary level.
There's nothing in writing that says that you're aware of.
There's nothing that I'm aware of, and in talking to the principals, who most of them have been principals at their respective schools for numerous years, there have been no arrests that they have record of or that they remember at all at the elementary level.
Can I chime in?
Yes.
I made 1 arrest in 3 years, and I worked specifically with Justin's team with the goal of the student getting the help that he needed. And it was a pretty severe case, and it wasn't a normal case. But our goal was to get him into Justin's program so he could get the help that he needed. Justin, do you remember that case? From Bealefield?
I believe so. I do remember the intensity of both the incident and the need. And I will say, in 15 years of doing diversion, I couldn't put a number on it, but there have been arrests at the elementary level. So I can assure and confirm that there have been. They are I would probably say less than 10 in 15 years. But that would be a best guess, and that's not helpful to a specific data question. That said, the state statute does, to your point, to your question, Molly, again, I don't know if this is helpful, but state statute does say that the minimum age of arrest in the state of Connecticut is 7. And there's currently a legislative effort to push that to 12. But right now, state statute says that no one under the age of 7 can be arrested.
I will vouch for the fact that in the 3 years that Officer Sprato, Officer Harmon, and myself have been in the elementary schools, there's only been 1 arrest, and it was mine. And it was only in the effort to get that student the help that he needed through Justin's program.
I find it interesting that a child needs to be arrested to get the help from Justin's program.
Well, that was something.
At that point.
Yeah, it's a very lengthy story, but I will say that Justin and I and Sergeant Porter have worked forward in changing some of the things that we had to do to get that child the help that in the future we wouldn't necessarily have to go through with an arrest, but it was going through the juvenile review board. He never went to court. He was, as Sergeant Porter mentioned before, issued a piece of paper summons, and we immediately brought Justin's team on to get him what he needed. And then we have worked forward in the future to not have that same outcome.
And to be helpful, present day, there are no blocks for that to be the case. So anybody can refer to anything for us. And the pathway of an arrest is not the singular entry point, which it was, and admittedly it was in prior years, but we've resourced up enough to be able to kind of, be of a support and when it's needed, and not waiting for an arrest to take place either.
Kristen, forgive me, I forgot about that case, but I do know, to Justin's point, that we do now have a portal, if you will, where we can refer kids without an arrest. It doesn't have to be an elementary age child. It could be a high school with high school age child with I don't know, disciplinary issues at home. Doesn't fall to the level of the police. However, we can make the referral to Justin's group and Bonnie Daly, who's wonderful down there, to get the parents and the child the help they need.
Thank
And
you.
to the extent it's helpful, part of this is also bolstered by state policy that is just moving a lot of had moved status offenses out of the court system. You know, things that are illegal only because of your age, like not going to school and running away and beyond control at home and in school. And those are Youth Service Bureau responsibilities. The state's not giving us any funding to do that work, but you know, our YSB had been moving in that direction because it intellectually and philosophically made perfect sense. Young people don't need to, the same way you wouldn't arrest a person having a seizure in a movie theater for disrupting the peace. You don't monitor and charge youth behavior for trauma and behavioral health challenges.
Thank you. Diana, is that hand a new hand? Okay, go.
Yeah,
Diana.
one of my questions about the program, was it the program? Are we looking at the program overview now? What are we looking at? I'm sorry.
This
We're looking at the job description?
Yeah.
Okay. The job description, I just want to reiterate, you know, some of the same issues we had with or folks expressed with the other documents. There's no mention of a need for understanding adolescent development or brain development. There's no mention of the understanding of race, racism, or bias. There's no mention of training around frameworks of restorative justice or mediation or de-escalation. There's no mention of tracking, reporting, documenting contact with kids that I saw, unless I was looking at the wrong document. I didn't realize there were two. And then there's a conversation about referrals, but I'm interested in knowing how we figure out recidivism and success rate with referrals.
Molly, I see your hand.
Sorry, no, I'm taking that down.
Okay.
Can I just make a quick point?
Yes.
You know, Roger Hart had made some good points on some of the paperwork and things that we have gathered here. And it really is a conglomerate of a bunch of different documents from different eras, different timeframes. Know that this is just the beginning, I think, of placing some of the high points of these documents together in a new memorandum of understanding between the schools and the police department. And, you know, I think that's something that Marco Gaylord had asked me about, and we do want to move forward with that, but we wanted to see what this panel came up with for some recommendations. And we're off to a good start.
Yeah. Okay, so we had said this meeting would go until 8 o'clock. We do have many, if not all of our SROs here. So recognizing that they might not be able to join another meeting, I'm curious if we are okay with extending the meeting so that we can hear from the SROs as we at least begin to touch on item 5 from our agenda, hearing from administrators, teachers, and SROs. Since we have administrators and teachers on this committee who I know will be here at future meetings, is it amenable to all if we go a little bit past 8 so that we can hear from the SROs? All right, I see some thumbs up. Thank you, everyone. So yeah, just to provide the preface or the background for this agenda item, at our next meeting, we will be hearing from youth on their perspectives on this program. We also want to hear from the adults involved. And so if we don't get to the teachers and the administrators tonight, I think that's okay, but I would like to hear from the SROs, and I will turn it over to whomever wants to begin.
All right, I'll start. Unless Larry has to go, and if you have to go right now, Larry, that's totally understandable.
Larry, do you want to chime in first? Because you got to go.
Yeah, could I please?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Well, hello, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Larry Willard. I'm the school resource officer at the high school. This is me and myself and Officer Magnano. This is our third year being in the high school. Best position so far throughout my 8 years at the Middletown PD is being a resource officer. Is there any questions you need me to answer? Do you want to know like our daily duties or, some of the cases that we responded to? Or is this just an introduction phase?
I think we're interested in your experiences as an SRO, hearing about your daily work. That would be great.
Yeah, no problem. So we work hand in hand with the administrators, guidance counselors, social workers, and the CSOs, the campus security officers. I could give you like a daily rundown. We get there in the morning. So we meet and greet the kids, kind of get a feel of the day because the chatter in the hallways will let you know. And a lot of kids come up to us and fill us in because we do have a great rapport with all the students. So they alert us to little minor things that are going on. Let's say fights that may happen between students. And so we work together with some of the administrators and try to have a restorative circle, resolve those issues. Then we check in with the administrators, the guidance counselors, some of the social workers to see if they were made aware of any issues that may have happened over the past night or, while they're home during the weekend. We deal with a lot of domestic violence issues, sexual abuse, and, kids that unfortunately are suicidal. And that's one point that I wanted to touch upon. We did receive mental health training, and unfortunately, we do deal with a lot of kids that experience suicidal ideations. And when we work with the social workers, we come up with a safety plan, and usually they advise us if the student is, suicidal, and therefore we have to go and, commit them usually to CCMC. But we also like to get a diagnosis of the student, and so therefore we could make our adjustments and have safety plans for those students. We teach we go in a lot of classes like forensic classes, civics classes. We do a lot of Q&As and go over different laws. Driving laws is big because a lot of high school students are receiving their license. So we go over laws with that. We go over search and seizure. So we're very involved. It's like we are part of the MHS community, and I can speak for the other SROs as well. They are very involved in their schools, and it's one whole community, and that's how we look at it. Let's see. In daily things. There's so many times where, like, we go above and beyond to create this bond and this great rapport with these students. We do turkey drives during Thanksgiving. We could go drop off meals to the kids' houses. Different students need different motivations. So I know one student in particular, we set daily goals. And if he, has a great day, the teachers alert us. And then during lunchtime, I'll go and play basketball with him. and that just keeps them on a positive path and, on the way to success and getting that diploma. Let's see. If there's anything else, just let me know. I'll be happy to answer them.
So Officer Woolard, I do have a question for you. Now, we work in the same school as you know, right? Our administrators speak very highly of your team. We've had other teams that we didn't have the same level of success with in past years. But do you think your training encompasses everything that you do for us, or are there gaps between what you do and what your training has brought to the table?
I think that helps balance us, the training, but it also comes down to the individual as well, the individual officer. Not every officer is meant to be a school resource officer, and we understand that. And the goal is to get more officers into that position that fit and suit a school resource officer.
Is there overlap between your posts? Your postings, or is there, so when we're going to get a new resource officer, are you going to be around with them for a few weeks before you leave, or you leave and then they come?
In the past, it's pretty much they leave and a new officer will come in. Hopefully in the future, the school and or the officers, the previous school resource officers could have some say or input in who will become the new resource officer. And then maybe there could be some training or guidance that they could go through that we could help establish.
My last question for you is, in your training, do you have any scenario-based training that you do, or is it all academic where you sit in the classroom?
Mostly academic, but there are some scenarios that we go through or videos that we watch and see how others respond to them, and we could figure out the correct way or the most beneficial way to respond to a scene or incident.
Thank you. I won't take any more of your time tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Larry's going to have to sign off. I know he was looking to be the first to speak. So thank you, Larry. I appreciate you joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Have a good night, y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
I just want to point out real quick, the other high school SRO can't be here because he's coaching the high school baseball team. So I feel like that should be known.
Thank you for that. Molly?
Yeah, I just had a question for the high school officer, the SRO. Are they, when they're on duty, are they in their uniform with their sidearm, or are they dressed in plain clothes?
We're all in our uniform.
Most occasions they're in full uniform. However, they could make arrangements by calling me and just asking if they could have a day where they want to dress down, and we can do that as well. But they do have to have badge, gun, the things that make them police officers and have the ability to defend people in the event it's needed.
And Beverly?
What happens in the summertime when school is out? Do they go back to the field and then return back in September, August or September?
Yes, unfortunately, I want to say 2 administrations, maybe 2 years ago, they changed 2 or 3 years ago, they changed it to the point where in the summertime you return back to the patrol division. So you're handling routine calls. And this also happens during the winter break and spring break. We'd like to keep them all year round. I gotta be honest, but police department won't have it for budgetary reasons.
All right. Another SRO like to share what your day-to-day is like, or what your experiences have been?
Yeah, I'll hop in. I'm the school resource officer over at Woodrow Wilson. And before we get started, we're just not cops from wherever who get planted into our schools. Just looking in this room alone, Dr. Loomis, you were my teacher back at the high school. Mrs. Ford was my 5th grade teacher. I teach Dare in her class. Justin, we work at the JRB together. So we're not just cops who come in from wherever and just kind of get stuck in the schools. We're very connected into the town of Milltown. Still am a youth mentor with Hal Kaplan. YMCA before that, I was a substitute teacher throughout Middletown when I was finishing up my degree. I was a youth coordinator at a museum in Berlin. So pretty much my entire career from college up has been in some way revolved around kids, juvenile students. So it's not that I got stuck in this position. It's not that I ended up here just by chance. It's something that I've been kind of working on my entire adult life. Over at Woodrow Wilson, my day pretty much starts like Larry's does. When those kids come off the bus, I'm usually the first one out there. Before COVID, and we had all the parents dropping off, it was pretty much just the buses would get there, unload hundreds of kids, and they'd make their way into the school. I would probably be the only adult out there. It could be 10 degrees, 15 degrees. I'd be out there with a jacket, being the first one to say good morning, hello to the kids. They'd all get into the school, and that's kind of where the day begins. No 2 days are the same. Typically, I'm walking the halls with Mr. Hunter and our new CSO, Mr. Austin, just kind of touching base with the kids, saying hi to anybody. It's a lot different these days because the majority of kids need supervision in the hallway, so it's not just students on their own. But you kind of, even though it's not necessarily a responsibility, see if kids at a pass, find out where they're going, what are they up to, chit chat with them, just kind of get to know them. That's the best way, I would say, of just a daily basis, just getting to know the students at the school. And you get to learn a lot about the kids just from them being in the hallway, passing through, hearing what they're talking about, just seeing what they're up to. I teach classes. I taught classes this year on DNA and science classes, on the Bill of Rights, in the history classes. The PE teachers have asked to talk about domestic violence and drug use when those become the topics. I emailed the teachers pretty much saying, hey, if there's anything that I can help with, my input, and it always turns into just a Q&A session about police work. So it starts as, yeah, we're talking about DNA. Yeah, that's cool. The kids want to talk about something totally different. So it turns into a lesson about something specific. And it just turns into whatever the kids feel like asking. So that's one of the best ways of interaction with the students. I know you guys, the majority of people I want to hear says they do not want to see students involved in the court system. Either do we. That's the last option. If we can exhaust all our resources before that's what we have to get to, we're on the same page, same exact page. And we are very open with the administration. They come to us, the guidance counselors, administration, police. We all work very closely to make sure everyone is aware of what's going on. Everyone chimes in terms of what they want to see happen in their input. It's not me storming the halls and just arresting kids left and right. That's the last thing all of us want to see. So it's a very intertwined, and Mrs. Gonzalez can speak to this as well. We are very open with each other. If there's concerns, she has my number. She'll text me. If I know something, I'll text her. The same with the guidance counselors. They'll come to me when there's a DCF referral that's gotten to them before it gets to the PD. So if they have concerns, they bring them to me. And I think that's one of the biggest advantages we have of being in the schools all the time, is we're familiar with the staff, the students. They're comfortable speaking with me, and I'm completely comfortable speaking with them. And it's almost like we work together, even though we're technically from different departments. It's a very close relationship, and I think that benefits the students the most out of anybody. They really benefit from us being so familiar with just the ins and outs of the schools, essentially. So that's kind of my day by day basis. Every day is different, but yeah, there's a lot of different things to. And I think tomorrow, as a matter of fact, I'll be with the JRB with Justin. So I try to be as involved as possible with everything going on at that school. And just because it's not just where I ended up by chance, it's something that I think the majority of us are very passionate about.
And I'm going to jump in after Eric. I agree with everything he said. It's actually a very nice, strong working relationship. Not only with him, but I've also worked with Officer Harmon before, Officer Sprato. like it's a strong working relationship day to day. But Eric, you forgot the most important part. Tell them the very important mission you had on Friday from a student. You want to share that? Or do
Sure.
you know?
These are just, as far as the non-police interactions go that aren't documented, we don't talk about. I was somewhere in the school and Mrs. Gonzalez called me over the radio to the cafeteria, which during lunchtime, cafeteria can get pretty busy, pretty hectic. So I thought there was an issue. It's just certain students wanting me to come into the caf just to say hi. I think they said it's just to make my day better. So
That's
it's stuff like
exactly.
that. That's not documented. No one's going to hear about because it's not anything exciting. It's just, there are these relationships that are forged just by being there and being present that nobody knows about unless, for example, Mrs. Gonzalez brings up. And I think just one more thing, I also do the DARE program at Lawrence, and Officer Sprato can talk about this. There's a student at Lawrence who is by far the best part of, I think, my day because I do the closing there, but there's a young student who absolutely loves the police. So I know we talk about a lot of negative interactions with the police, but I think seeing, his name is Davion or Xavion, he is just an absolute police fanatic. And it's probably one of the best parts of my day is seeing him run to the hallway before going to his bus and hugging. And I get to see the badge that Officer Nick gave to him earlier that day. But all right, so that's my part. Thank you very much for your time.
I just want to say too, because I forgot Officer Chursek. She too is fabulous and we've worked together. And yes, the young lady called me in the cafeteria. She wanted to know where Eric was. And I said, I don't know why. And she says, well, I just want to make his day. And I said, oh yeah. And she's like, yeah. And so I called him over and it was nice. It was just nice, random, just so happened to happen on Friday.
Thank you for
All
that.
right. I'm not shy. I'll jump in next. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Kristen Tursick. I've been on the department for 20 years. I was put in elementary schools and I love it. I have Bealfield, I have Farmhead.